Charles Tarbey, welcome for Property Fast Track. Good to have you here for a Monday.
Thank you very much, Nick. Kayley?
Welcome. Now, Charles, the Reachtel poll released today found that 2/3 of New South Wales respondents oppose more development in areas which are already jam-packed. What are you thinking about this?
It's going to be an issue because we were so far behind all the way back 10 years ago. They were announcing 10 years ago that we would be 200,000 homes short by 2020 if development wasn't increased and improved. So this problem goes all the way back to the previous government. And so it's there. It's not going to change because we have immigration, we have population growth, people are living longer, so it's going to happen. And something has to give because you can't keep pushing people further and further out west or north or south because then they've got to find work and they've got to get to work. Then the infrastructure we have, should I keep going?
Yeah, I've got you.
You got me?
I think I've got you.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Property Council of Australia Executive Director Jane Fitzgerald, she says that it's well overdue to have this discussion about just how sustainable growth in Sydney is. And she makes a really good point because we've got kids. Our kids and their kids deserve to have jobs and homes near us, their parents, in the decades to come. So sustainable growth that meets the demands of a growing population is critical. We also need to consider stuff like hospitals, as you touched on, and infrastructure, roads, transport options, green spaces. Do we now look at doing things differently where we have suburban development put on the back burner and urban development brought forward? Do we go up and not out?
Well, look, a lot of parts of the country have already done that. If we're referring to, say, the Sydney market rather than Melbourne or Adelaide, those two states have done a great job at providing supply at a steady level that's met demand, which is why their pricing is so much better than Sydney. And if we don't do something, or if the state governments don't do something, or start looking at releasing, and there are some areas in Sydney, you wouldn't believe it, there are some areas still in the heart of Sydney, old industrial areas, old gas areas, gas burn areas, that have been sitting there idle. They're absolutely perfect for development, and they're not going to impact on people. I understand what it's like. I live up in the Blue Mountains, I've mentioned to you before, and now Badgerys Creek, they're talking about aircraft flying over Glenbrook or Blaxland at 5,000 feet coming into land, and everybody's starting to complain about and up in arms about it, and I understand why. I live there. I don't want to change. I don't want to see change. But at the same time, what people don't really get is that some of that change is important to the increased value of their property and continued growth of their asset. So at some point in time, if you move yourself away from where the infrastructure is or where everything is, it's going to impact on the value of your property as well.
Who do you think has more clout generally, residents or development groups?
Okay, that's a loaded question. I have no idea what you're talking about. At the end,
Nicely deflected, Charles.
At the end of the day, there's been so much talk about developers and contributions and so on.
Yep.
But I remember there was a McDonald's store touted for Katoomba.
Yes.
And it didn't go ahead.
It's a World Heritage listed area, and the residents don't want Maccas there.
Residents went crazy over it, and I mean it's a food store. And they won. I think
a similar thing happened in Byron Bay. And I remember a battle maybe 10 years ago it was a timeshare resort. One of the big resorts was trying to get in there, and that got shut down by locals.
I guess we can say that that it can be done by local people. I know another development site in the state of New South Wales that it's in an area that a lot of people like to go and visit and holiday in, and people want to build a larger hotel and wedding facility, etc., and it's been shut down by local residents. They've managed to win so far, so I think it can be done.
Charles, I know later we're going to be speaking to Tom Panos about auction wraps for the weekend, but it feels like every weekend on the news there's a story about the property housing market is on the way down. We've been talking about this for quite a few weeks now. It feels to me as though the media is just dying to get that news story. Oh, there you go, bubbles burst, it's gone,
yep,
it's all gone. Over.
And
can't wait to say it.
I actually really am happy about that talk because for too long it was about how crazy it was going, and that was really stimulating the market beyond where it should be. Look, auction clearance rates have been dropping steadily. Across the nation, they were 67.1%, which isn't too bad when you look at it. There were areas such as Brisbane that did reasonably well in comparison to its normal way it's doing business. So there are other markets starting to slowly creep up while the others down. Melbourne's still 72.1% clearance rate
What's
with
a bad result?
1,111 auctions. Look, I can tell you a tough result for an auctioneer and an agent is when you start to get into the 50s.
Yeah.
You start to really feel it. The clearance rates in the 60s is still not too bad. If you think about it, you put 100 properties up for auction and 67+% of them sell. That's pretty good.
It's not bad, yeah.
Because when you look at the private treaty, agents would be happy to get 60 to 70% of all private treaty properties away. So it's still pretty good, Kayley.
Charles Tarbey's here tonight. 13 12 83. If you want some advice on property, whether you want to sell it, rent it, or buy it, or shift it, he can help you. 13 12 83. Also message us at talkinglifestyle.com.au. We'll go to Redcliffe pretty soon as well as we go around the grounds and check in there with Maddie Dolan and find out what's happening at Century 21 in Brisbane. With house prices having rocketed in New South Wales and Victoria, logic says something's got to give up. And according to Macquarie Bank, it is a Sydney population problem. It's predicting that due to the house prices, over 130,000 New South Welshmen and their Sheilas will move to Queensland. That will lead to an $8 billion transfer of housing equity. To talk more about this movement of people, we're joined by Simon Kuestenmacher, the Director of Research at the Demographics Group. G'day.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, mate. It begs the question, why Queensland? I mean, I like Queensland, but, why do others love it so much too?
Well, I guess the general logic here with the current house price is that you have a median house price in Sydney of $1.2 million, and it's less than half of that in Brisbane. So that suggests that as a Sydney homeowner, you might actually just cash in and buy a house of equal quality in Brisbane, and then you have $600,000 to spare. That is an attractive lifestyle option in theory, and apparently more and more people are taking this up. We've seen net interstate migration to Queensland picking up dramatically over the last 3 years. So we're now up to 15,000 people that move from within Australia to Queensland again, and this trend is probably going to stabilise at around these numbers or even grow higher again.
Simon, Charles here. I used to sell real estate in the western suburbs of Sydney, and you could sell a property there for, let's say, $500,000, go to Brisbane, buy the same property for $300,000, and you had a pool and a double garage thrown in. Now, that all went out the window when the Carr government came in and slapped an exit tax here in Sydney, and the Sydney prices absolutely died, and Brisbane took off. And you almost got Brisbane at the same median price as Sydney at one stage as what happened with Perth. So now, because that's all been reversed, the people are back on, ready to sell, ready to rush up, ready to put cash in the bank.
Exactly. It makes sense if you think about it, especially if you're in a lifestyle stage where the kids are out of the house and you all of a sudden sit on $1 million. You might not be an income millionaire, but you might as well cash in on that asset. Makes sense to me.
I think particularly for people who live in the eastern seaboard, which is all of our listening area, Simon, that there's an emotional attachment to Queensland. Quite often, us baby boomers would go there for holidays a couple of times a year. You'd trek up to, the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast for holidays. So I think there's an emotional attachment with Queensland for a lot of people as well.
That also makes perfect sense to me. And Queensland is becoming hipper, if you will. So if you lived in inner Sydney or inner Melbourne, which are arguably the hippest areas in Australia, Brisbane is catching up rapidly on this. So you get warmer climate and you still have all your nice, hip cafes. It's a cultured city. So the big culture bonus that Sydney and Melbourne arguably had a while ago, Brisbane is definitely shrinking.
Simon, I think you got more flights going from Auckland to Brisbane than you do having Auckland or Sydney to Brisbane nowadays. There's a lot of people migrating from the Shaky Isles into Queensland market. They love it up there, and you can understand why when you look at the weather situation. Tell me, do you think this is a similar, or there's a similar trend happening in Victoria as well?
Victoria has been growing absolutely fantastically since the financial crisis. interstate migration has just gone up. Migration has gone up in Victoria, which is why Melbourne is growing at a faster rate than Sydney. So I think overall in Australia, we are very well positioned in terms of housing growth. So I don't see a big slowdown in the house prices coming because there's still demand. We still have migration. And just because so many Australians actually own their home, it is still important for everybody for house prices to be high enough. So then I would argue that the government has an incentive to just increase migration figures and then keep house prices high this way.
Simon Kuestenmacher is with us. He is the Director of Research at the Demographics Group. You mentioned that folks who maybe don't have the kids at home anymore want to retire to somewhere more affordable, Queensland. What if you're not at that stage in life? What if you're just starting a family but you're attracted to go north because of the lesser cost needed to buy a home? Can you find jobs?
Yes, absolutely. Especially Brisbane is a booming region, and we see more and more that southeast Queensland, so that's Brisbane plus Sunshine Coast plus Gold Coast, that this is becoming more and more one coherent economic region. This is where growth is happening. So this is the third city of Australia, is southeast Queensland, and it's very attractive for Asian tourists, for Asian business people, because it's just a couple of hours closer to home. It's booming. Real estate developers are storming to Brisbane. So it makes, my bet is on Brisbane. Yeah.
All right, well, good stuff.
Do you think that eventually, Simon, the move will be further north and we'll see people, as Brisbane gets full and Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast, you'll see people moving to those northern cities like Bundaberg and Townsville and Rockhampton?
So that's the lifestyle argument, that you say as soon as certain cities, the house price in certain cities become too high, unaffordable, people then look for attractive lifestyle locations, and you have those locations around all of the capital cities, and people will, in some smaller way, definitely go to all of those regional cities. So if Brisbane is growing, all of the surrounding lifestyle towns are benefiting as well.
Simon, the biggest part of what I'm seeing coming out of Queensland, I think Queensland is starting to get attractive. I don't think it's completely there yet. And the reason I say that is that it needs to be way ahead of Sydney, and it's only just getting there now. In the last 5 years, just over 5 years, Brisbane's only grown by 23.8% in capital value of homes. In apartments, only 0.9%. It's been pretty ordinary. And at the same time, Sydney's grown by 75%. So this is where I think now we're starting to reach the balance where it used to be years and years ago, that balance between Brisbane and Sydney. And so I think it's just about to start in that marketplace, because as Sydney starts to grow in a steady manner, I think Brisbane will grow too now at the same pace.
Yeah.
Good on you, Simon.
That's some good observations. Charles, thank you for that. And we thank you for your time tonight too. Simon Kuestenmacher, Director of Research, the Demographics Group. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
So I would have thought, just off the back of the earlier story, if there is people in Sydney, you know, thanks to this Reach Tell poll saying that the place is full, that if 130,000 people are going to move to Queensland, then we might, you know, some folks in New South Wales might be saying good riddance.
Yeah, okay. We might all try to identify who we think should go. Put together a list, send them an invitation.
Yeah, look, do that. 13 12 83. If you think there are people who should move out of New South Wales and they should be put into a little pet pack and trucked off to Queensland, then let us know.
We'll get Anastasia Palaszczuk to send them an invite.
Yes, and maybe invite you up and give you the keys to the city for the weekend.
That's right.
This is the best time in Queensland now. The springtime is beautiful. Just beautiful. Yeah, especially if you're a golfer.
Yeah, well, you are.
Yes.
Charles Tarbey's here tonight, 13 12 83. Golf advice, real estate advice as well. In a moment, we go around the grounds, and stay with us soon for our auction wrap with Tom Panos. Property Fast Track with Charles Tarbey, 13 12 83. He's here to take your calls tonight if you have some real estate questions. Let's get a look around the grounds and a snapshot right now with Maddie Dolan from Century 21 in Redcliffe, Brisbane. Evening, Maddie.
Evening.
Evening. Maddie runs a fantastic business. She started most of her career. When I first met her, she was doing a lot of holiday letting because of that area was very significantly that way, and then expanded her business quite incredibly. Maddie, we've been talking a lot about Brisbane tonight, which is one of the reasons we wanted to hear from you. We've been talking about the marketplace there. What's your view in the street right now? How's it going for you?
Oh, extremely well. Our biggest problem now is, compared to 3 months ago, lack of stock. We've got so many people coming to Brisbane.
It's amazing, isn't it? But the Redcliffe area is really quite unique. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, it is unique because we're encompassed by water, but we are the first north side coastal area, and we're 25 minutes from international and domestic airports and only 40 minutes from the CBD.
And Maddie, you got a train line there, I think, right? You got a train stop? Yep.
Yes, finally, after 100 years, we got the train. Yes.
And where are your buyers coming from? You say you got people, with plenty of inquiry for you. Where are they coming from?
A lot from Melbourne and Sydney that are land banking. We have got a lot coming out of Brisbane because of the high prices in Brisbane, and our prices still haven't peaked, so that they can afford to sell in Brisbane and move to more relaxed lifestyle.
That's extraordinary, because we were just talking to a gentleman about people selling in Sydney to move to Brisbane. Now they're selling in Brisbane to move to Redcliffe.
Yes.
Wow.
What sort of buyers are you seeing in the area, Maddie? You're seeing families, or is it young professionals?
It's actually, there is not one specific buyer, which is really, really good. It's a multitude. People that are coming here to retire, investors that are looking at, because there's great rental returns on our units and apartments close to the CBD. And then we've got the younger ones that are saying, well, okay, it's more lifestyle than it is that hustle and bustle, and which they don't mind now with the train, that they can actually commute back and forwards into Brisbane.
Ouch, your phone is dropping, crackling, clunking, Maddie. So,
sorry.
Tell me, if you were to invest right now, that's a good question for you, would you buy an apartment or would you buy a house in Redcliffe?
Probably now I'd buy an apartment because they're extremely good buying.
Yeah, okay.
We've dropped about 15 or 20%.
Is that on new and old apartments? Does it matter?
It's across the board.
Okay.
You've probably got a better chance in an established apartment, maybe because the developer costs are still moving high, and there might be a great opportunity with off-the-plan sales soon, Maddie, if things don't change.
Most definitely.
All right, good stuff. Maddie Dolan, thank you, from Century 21 in Redcliffe, Brisbane.
You, Maddie.
Let's go to hair and makeup, just ahead of Sky News tonight. Charles Tarbey's little hair and makeup buddies, Tom Panos. Good evening, Tom.
Hello, guys. How you going?
Hey, Tom, did you bring the foundation? Did you bring the foundation this time? Because I keep forgetting.
Charles knows that there's only one person that gets foundation on that show.
Oh, that's right.
And it's not me or Charles.
Yeah.
But you guys have some excellent foundations in real estate, Tom. Let's start out with Melbourne. Has it bounced back from the grand final interrupted previous weekend of sales?
Yep. Well, it was the only market that went over the 70% across Australia, and it bounced back. I think it's around 72%. Again, talking to agents today, they basically said it wasn't anything else but a pause button press, and everyone was back in there, and sales were happening, and Melbourne continues to be the marketplace that vendors are happy. Agents would be happier if they had a little bit more stock, but it's leading the nation.
So you've noticed some aggressive behaviour by buyers at recent auctions. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I was doing a property at Elwood, and the property got passed in, and then we had the buyer hung around afterwards and basically said, "Here's the deal. My offer is $1,350,000, or I'm leaving. I've got an auction to go at $330,000. That's it. Take it or leave it." And what we're seeing now is that buyers have got this power where they're not scared about missing out. They're saying, "You're the person that is going to miss out. You're going to miss out on our money because we're here now," and that's what's changed.
Tom, we've had an increase in stock this week. We've had a number of weeks of increase, but this week we had a large increase over last week of 2.13%, which is quite significant. So there's more stock coming on again, and I think that's probably why you're getting that a little bit of buyer pushback, which I think is a very good thing.
Yeah, well, this property, Charles, the owner wanted $50,000 more. He just looked at us and he said, you know, what do we do? I said, I don't know. Look, he might have an auction to go to at 330. He may not. But the issue is you've got no other buyers. There is no one fighting for your property. I would take the safe thing, and that is what, you know, experts say, take the cash, and they took the cash and they sold it.
The old bird in the hand is worth two in the bush philosophy. You can't beat it, can you, Tom?
You know, when you finish radio, you should come and join me and Charles in real estate.
Mate, I'd love to. I love real estate. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit of a part-time hobby.
You got a tie?
Got a tie? Got a couple of ties. I got one for every day of the week.
What are you talking about, Tom? I haven't seen you in a tie before.
The car's got to come with a Prius, though. That's the only thing, Tom. And some sustainability options in there.
Yeah, that's it.
Look,
Exactly.
Kayley, we're looking for good people. Anyway, the doors are always open. Qualifications aren't high as well. We can get you in.
I don't want to use core flute signboards. I want recyclable materials.
Okay.
How are you going to go with the gold blazer?
Gold blazer, I'm good with that. So we're deviating. Tom, the Reserve Bank left the official cash rate unchanged at 1.5%. I don't think anyone was surprised by that. Are low interest rates still this main driving force, do you reckon, behind the strength in markets?
Yes, because I think there's other things that aren't positive that they're talking about in the marketplace. But the one thing that is positive is that these are record low interest rates. And as long as those numbers stack up, which we're basically saying that at the cost of money, you're not really, if you're an investor, you're still not dipping in that much money in to pay the difference between the rents coming in. And if you are a buyer, an owner-occupier of a property, you still look very attractive paying a mortgage payment than instead of paying rents. But there's talk that situation is not permanent, and that may change next year.
Tom, you know auctions well. You've been doing it for many, many years, right? Some decades.
Yeah.
And we know that some markets do it more and better than others. For example, Brisbane is not generally such a market that sells by auction.
Yeah.
But let's say you've got a particularly interesting house and, you know, as the vendor, as the seller, you're a bit hung up on auctions. You reckon it's right for you, but no one else around you does it. Would you still recommend that someone do that?
Tough question, because I actually think for an auction to work, what you really need is to have, you know, a good number of people that you think is going to be attracted to the campaign and that you're going to have something that's going to have competition. So what you're saying to me is if you've got a marketplace, a suburb that traditionally people don't like the auction system, which means that when they're scanning on properties, they're going to actually look at the ones with a number beforehand. You might have less interest in the property to start off with. But if the property is so unique that the real estate agent is struggling to actually put a figure on the property because there's not many comparables, I then make the exception because it is too difficult. It's not like you're comparing one plasma screen to another plasma screen. It's not a commodity. It's actually something that separates it. So I do see it, but in the ideal world, you want to be in a marketplace that they love auctions and that you've got an oversupply of buyers for the stock that's on the market.
Yeah, good advice. Tom Panos, thank you so much. We'll catch you tonight with Charles Tarbey on Sky Business News. Chat next week, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Nick. Kayley.
See you next week.
John.
See you on the telly.
Thank you.